GWATA TV gives you a first look at North Central Washington's business news. You'll hear from our local business, tech, and education companies as Jenny discusses hot topics and current events with some of the best innovators and pioneers in North Central Washington.
Hello, North Central Washington, and welcome to GWATA TV. I'm your host, Jenny Rojanasatian, and it's a pleasure to be with you today. On today's episode of GWATA TV, we're going to be diving into STEM education, which is one of the focuses of our nonprofit. But really specifically, we're going to be talking about what the current attainment looks like in terms of kids graduating with degrees, certificates, or credentials in order to be successful in the workforce, and why this is a real growing problem, not only in North Central Washington, but across Washington State. We've invited Dr. Jean Sharratt to talk to us about some of the work that's happening at a local and state level in order to address this really important need of getting our students into careers that are going to take care of them and their families for the generations to come. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with Dr. Jean Sharratt. Welcome to GWATA TV. We are on air with Dr. Jean Sharratt, co-chair of the Washington STEM Innovation Alliance. Welcome.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited. I get the pleasure of working with you along with Dr. Sue Kane on some STEM initiatives in the community. And so we've known each other for a few years now. But for those watching today who may not be familiar with your work, I'd love to start with introducing you, Jean. Tell us a little bit about your background in education.
Well, thank you. I was in K-12 education for 30 years. Included in that was the superintendent of the ESD here, and that covers the 4 counties of Grant, Douglas, Chelan, Okanogan, about 44,000 students. I left here and went to WSU, where I was a professor for 10 years for them, and then joined the governor's cabinet in Olympia, and I was in charge of higher education for the state of Washington. And part of that was to connect early learning, all of K-12 and all of higher ed into a seamless system, so we'd have more students graduating, more students going on to productive careers. And then for the last 3 years, after I left the cabinet, I've been working with a number of contract organizations across the country to increase more students going forward into post-secondary education. So I've been doing that. It's been a great 47-year career. I'm as excited today as I was when I started in 1972.
Well, you have an incredible legacy and history of supporting students. You're so passionate about supporting students. And the work that you're doing, as you alluded to, is continuing. So, so thank you for that. Can you help paint a picture of kind of where we are in Washington State right now in terms of students being prepared for workforce?
You bet. We're not doing an adequate job, quite frankly. We need to do a much better job of allowing all students to have a productive pathway going forward from high school into their next step. Could be the military, apprenticeship, a certificate, a credential, a degree. Roughly around 60% of our students who graduate in the state say they're going on to something after high school, but 4 years later, less than 35% have attained any certificate or credential. So we have a large problem in Washington in terms of helping our students move forward with a productive career.
And this lack of attainment is meaning for employers, they're importing massive amounts of professionals into our state, right? Because they cannot fill the jobs. We're not growing our own.
That's exactly correct, Jenny. We're the #1 state in terms of the import of talent. No other state imports more talent than we do. So that means that our companies are reaching out to the other states, other 49 states, to bring in all that talent. Our own students are not getting those jobs. And so what we've got to do is close that gap between our own students' ability to get those jobs and reduce the number of people we import. And it's just incredible how our own students are, we're graduating them into really an unemployment line. All students have to have something post-high school, a certificate, a credential, an apprenticeship, a degree, but something that allows them to get a meaningful career. And right now, we're not doing as much as we could and should to help that out.
I think there used to be this misconception that only 4-year was the pathway now with the STEM economy, but that's just not true, right?
You're exactly right. We currently have projected 750,000 jobs in our state in the next 5 years. 2/3 of those will be in certificate, credentials, and apprenticeship, not in four-year programs. So we've really got to direct our students to very meaningful careers where you use your hands and mind both. And we've got to return dignity to the trades and dignity to the apprenticeship and dignity to the credential world out there. And only roughly 20% of our jobs in America require a four-year degree. So that's important for sure, but we've really got to direct our students on different pathways that have dignity associated with their work.
And the one-size-fits-all approach, we all know that doesn't work with students. So to have multiple layered pathways, whether that is a four-year and then onto a master's and PhD program, we need those students. We need those students who are going to help us engineer and build the buildings of the future as well.
Yes.
Let's talk about specifically with higher education. There's been some distrust going out of K-12 and into higher education. Why is that?
Yeah, I think the public is really looking at the affordability piece right now, and they're looking at what we call return on investment. And right now we're $1.6 trillion in student debt, which is an incredible amount. So we're saddling students coming out of institutions with a huge amount of debt. They then don't have the ability to buy a home, purchase a car, engage in the economy, return tax dollars to the community. So what we've got to do is address this thing called affordability. And right now, with tuition being so high across the country and in our own state, we are really locking a lot of young people out. We have got to really address the issue of access, affordability, and as importantly, persistence. And persistence relates to affordability. And so the worst case scenario in our state is people start, they take out a loan, they don't finish, they have a loan but no ability to pay back that loan because they don't have the attainment to get the job. So we've really got to address that in our state. And my job has been over the last decade or so to really reduce that issue, to really address affordability, and we've done some really good work in that area, and a little bit later on maybe we can talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this seems like a good stopping point. We've kind of laid the foundation of what's happening in education. We are going to head to a commercial break, but when we come back, Dr. Sharratt is going to share some more of the solutions and the creativity in addressing these important issues.
Perfect.
So please stay tuned. Welcome back to GWATA TV. We are on air with Jean Sharratt talking about STEM education and the importance of preparing our students for careers of the future. In our last segment, we kind of laid out some of the gaps, especially the high number of job openings and the lack of students who are prepared to go into those jobs here in Washington State. We're importing talent, jobs are going unfilled. Now let's dive into some of the solutions. And you, along with a lot of leaders across Washington State, are passionate about fixing that, including STEM Innovation Alliance.
Absolutely.
So what is the STEM Education Innovation Alliance?
You bet. Well, it's been in existence for about 6 years. I wrote a grant that got funded for $250,000 6 years ago to actually start an alliance in our state, which would be representative of all the business community and the higher ed community and anyone else who does workforce training. The purpose of that is to close the gap between the identified jobs, 750,000 or so, and the training institutions that we need to fill those jobs with skilled workers. We had a large gap 6 years ago, and over the last 6 or 7 years we've been able to close that gap significantly in healthcare, in agriculture, in medicine, in hydro, and manufacturing, and so we're making huge progress. We have a dashboard that we keep track of on a regular basis to make sure we're closing that gap, and we're trending the industries that are looking for STEM individuals all the time and trying to get ahead of the curve to put preparation programs in place and partnerships in place that will close that gap.
Let's talk about some of the members on the alliance. Can you share a little bit? You already talked about business. What is the makeup of your board? Absolutely.
We have the major manufacturers on there, such as Boeing and Fluke and others. We have the major technology, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook. They're all members of that. Google. We have small business represented on that. every education institution in the state, higher ed, the community technical colleges, our public baccalaureates, our private institutions, they're all on there as well. And in addition, we have private individuals, parents, and others on there. So we have about 40 members. We meet quarterly, and our last 2 meetings have been real interesting. The one we hosted one here in Wenatchee for the whole state in October. We focused on ag and ag production and ag mechanics. We also focused on hydro energy, and a big turnout, great meeting. We wanted the state individuals on the Alliance to see what we're doing in our area and how our ag industry is innovating and being creative, and so is our hydro industry and our medical industry, and why those industries need tech and STEM jobs. And then the one prior to that was in May, and we focused on biogenetics, and we were in Bothell, and there were over 3,000 current jobs for STEM graduates in biogenetics that we cannot fill in that North Seattle Bothell area because we don't have the talent. Well-paying jobs, 2-year certificate credential jobs, not necessarily 4-year, and so those are the kinds of things we listen to those employers who said, help us close that gap. We need people in biogenetics if we're going to maintain a strong position in Washington.
I think what's really incredible about your quarterly meetings and rotating that around the state is the exposure for everyone in the organization to see innovation outside of just King County or Seattle, right? Because so often we get kind of hyper-focused on the incredible job growth, which is important and should be recognized and applauded in Seattle, but there's also incredible growth in tech, like you said, in hydropower, in agriculture, the development of the Cosmic Crisp,
exactly.
with the scientists leading that work. The nature of being collaborative, I feel like, is longstanding in North Central Washington, but how, can you speak a little to bringing all the universities together, how that's helped create some alignment as well?
Absolutely. Well, the universities have primarily relied upon high school graduates, and that model is changing because we know in our state we currently have over 400,000 adults with some education but no attainment. So we're trying to get them back in the system to reskill. And every industry wants to reskill their employees because the number one asset any industry has is human capital. And you want to retain those good individuals. You don't want to lose them. And the cost of recruitment is huge. In Seattle, it's $110,000 to recruit another high-tech person. And so it would save you money as a business to retain your current staff. And if your current staff want to upskill, then provide that for them on your campus, pay their tuition, give them the time to do that, and that's what we find industry doing right now. We're doing it here in this community. They're doing it all over the state. They're trying to upskill, reskill their talent pool.
And the reskilling, as you just said, is a new kind of ballpark for our universities who, as you said, they were previously coming seniors from high school straight into a 4-year university, but now you have individuals in their 40s, 50s who maybe have faced automation changes or manufacturing changes and are looking to go back into a new pathway, right?
Exactly.
We don't want to leave those people behind as much as we want to support our students as well.
You're exactly right. And our community colleges really are a fulcrum for us there. We have 34 across the state. They're in all of our regions, and they have stepped up and are really getting engaged in this reskilling work. And I'm quite proud of our community college system in our state because they see the need and they're responding to that. An example of reskilling is out at Stamilt, for example. We used to have a number of people on the packing line or sorting line. Well, automation is changing that. But Stamilt and other employers would like to keep good employees, so they're offering opportunities for their employees to upskill to stay with the company. Very smart strategy.
Kudos to Stamilt for doing that.
Oh, yes.
Absolutely. We've got great employers in our backyard. Sure. As the STEM Educational Alliance continues your work, what are some of your focuses in the year ahead?
You bet. We want to stay focused on the changes in automation and how we can upskill employees to go from the packing line or the sorting line to coding. We want to work with the hydro industry to upskill all their work around sensor technology and big data analytics. We want to work with the medical community because not only in our area, but across the state and the nation, a severe shortage of technicians in the medical area. We also are trending the retirement line. I'm a baby boomer. A lot of folks in my generation are retiring out, but how will we replace them? So really smart companies are looking at those retirement curves, looking at retaining their employee base, and looking at upskilling their work. So the partnerships that you mentioned earlier, that's key. In our community, we are very strong in that. The work that you're doing in GWATA, the work that our community college is doing, the work that our employees are doing around partnerships is stellar.
And partnerships, we're going to explore more of that here in our next segment, but we do have to head to another commercial break. So please stay tuned and continue this conversation with Jean Sharratt and myself. We are on air today with Jean Sharratt talking about education, pathways for the future, and really robust conversation about what's happening in Washington State. Although we're not alone in this.
Correct.
Right? Some of the automation, jobs of the future that's changing across the country. Now, we just talked about the STEM Education Innovation Alliance. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling.
Perfect.
Jean, you also wear another hat, which is with the Center for Educational Effectiveness. And what is the Center for Educational Effectiveness?
Yes, it's a research center based in Bellevue, Washington, and they do research on both K-12 and higher education, but primarily K-12. And they're a group that has been in existence for about 15 years. They have over 1 million student, staff, parent surveys on how to improve the effectiveness of our K-12 system.
And why do we want to study the effectiveness of the K-12 system?
Yeah, we currently graduate only around 80% of our students from the K-12 system. That means 20% of our students really are going to be left behind, quite frankly. And if you have a high school diploma or less, it's going to be very, very hard for you to find work in the future, particularly work that will be a family income, middle income wage. So what we've got to do is get those graduation numbers up, never reduce quality. Every diploma should be a quality diploma, which puts you towards your next step, whether it be apprenticeship or certificate, degree or credential. And but right now we're losing 20% of our kids. So we've got to find out what we can do to close those gaps, get those students graduated, and get those students into meaningful employment.
Within the gaps, there are some populations that are really being underserved and left behind.
Correct.
Let's talk about those populations and what you've seen through the Center for Educational Effectiveness.
Yeah, just really currently in our state, we have 1.1 million K-12 students. Sadly, 40,000 of those students are homeless at any given night, and about 50% of those students are on free and reduced lunch. We have many districts in our state, many in our region actually, with 100% free and reduced lunch. The demographic is changing in Washington, in our country. Washington is currently the most culturally diverse state of the 50 states right now.
I did not know that.
With regard to student population. Yeah, we currently recognize 198 different languages in our state. That includes the dialects, of course. If you went to Federal Way School District, it's the most culturally diverse school district in our state. 80 different languages are spoken at Federal Way High School. So, and the reason for that, I get asked that a lot, is because Seattle's a port of entry. So a lot of our folks who come into our state take service jobs related to that, and so that's why that issue is there. But in our own area here, our low-income first-generation students really struggle. Mostly they struggle around the issue of poverty. And poverty is the single factor that is related, out-of-school factors related to student success. So what we've got to do is make sure those students have more time, more attention, and more access to opportunity. Not just those, but all students across the board. And that population is the workforce of the future. So what I call them the canaries in the coal mine. If they don't succeed, then we don't succeed as a state or a nation.
First of all, I think that diversity, that's really exciting.
Mm-hmm.
What a celebration that Washington State's so diverse, because that's only going to, it's an opportunity for us to strengthen and improve our communities, right? And to support students of all backgrounds. Obviously, though, it comes with some major gaps because we're leaving students behind.
Yes.
What are some solutions for students who are in one of these gap areas. You just talked about the poverty. So how do we add additional support to a student who might be in poverty, even in our backyard?
Absolutely. Well, there's a number of programs that we've identified in our research today. Extended school is one of those programs where students can stay after Saturday school. Additional adult support within the system, the hiring of additional parapros to help out. One of the big things that I'm in favor of that we just got passed by the state board is that we now have 7 pathways toward graduation for our students. And last decade or so, it was you had to pass the federal test to graduate. That's still one of the options, but there are 6 others now, including career technical education, including IB and AB and other kinds of dual credit opportunities. So we are now in the state of Washington providing additional pathways towards success. And every student now has a high school and beyond plan that starts at the middle school level, and they align their coursework with what they think might be a career interest for them. And finally, Washington is starting to take a lead nationally in providing optional pathways for a student toward graduation, never reducing quality, keeping a rigorous program, of course, but at the same time allowing some different pathways going forward.
So it's about meeting the students where they're at.
Correct.
And providing a different outlet, going back to quality. It's not just about stamping and getting them
Right.
through the system, but actually giving them something meaningful so that they can have a great career going ahead. Now, you're doing a study this upcoming year.
Correct.
Talk to me in specifics about the new study and what you hope to achieve through it.
You bet. Well, the study is funded through the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They've contracted with me through the Center for Educational Effectiveness to do a deep data analysis of all 295 districts in our state to look at which of those districts, which of those schools within the districts have demonstrated growth for Black, Latinx, and low-income students. What are the common elements that these schools have identified and are working on over time? And then we can take these common elements, I have a year to do the study, we can take these common elements and we can provide additional funding going forward for those schools and others in the area around these common elements that seem to be associated with student success for Black, Latinx, and low-income students.
And I imagine, too, by doing this work, you're going to be able to pull out programs that other schools can learn from, and really building on that collaborative nature of trying to raise all boats across Washington State
Exactly.
for our students. Now, Jean, if someone is watching today's program and they're a community member, we've shared a lot of content, a lot of stats that are a bit overwhelming
Right,
and
yeah.
can be discouraging. What is your advice for getting involved? You know, you've got the passion for this work. What can a community member do to support students?
Absolutely. Well, first, stay positive. You know,
Okay.
we're gonna be very, very successful in this work. Number 2, support your schools, your K-12 system, your higher ed system, and support your community partnerships, the GWATA partnerships, the chamber partnerships, all the others. We have business leaders in this community who are really stepping up to be partners. And I have a favorite saying that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And so we've got to go together. That's been a hallmark of our community, is we go together to solve common problems. That's why I'm so proud of this community, because we are a community that rallies together in a collaborative fashion. We've got to continue that. Number 2, I think we've got to make sure that each of our students has an opportunity to get into employment that has dignity. And by that I mean certificate, credential, apprenticeship. Could be a degree, 2 or 4 year. That's terrific. No problem there whatsoever, because we need that. But at the same time, let's make sure that all work has dignity, and we can do that through a collaborative partnership in our community.
Well, Jean, as always, you inspire me, so thank you for the work that you're doing. Anything else that we missed today before we head off?
No, I just am just real proud to work with GWATA, frankly, and your work, Jenny, and the work of your colleagues has just been so stellar, and I just appreciate it greatly.
Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us today, and for our audience out there at home, thank you for tuning in. I invite you to get involved, as Jean said, support your local school, get involved with a nonprofit, a chamber. You can be part of the solution, and we invite you to join us. It's been great having you on GWATA TV. We've got to head out for the day, but we'll see you next week.
Since 1999, GWATA has served as North Central Washington's Tech Alliance. As a 501c3, our mission is to bring people and technology resources together to create a thriving community. Through our work, we aim to inspire, engage, and connect.